The Jujuk Tubevelk had experienced over a century of peace after the end of the War of the Salian Legion in 240 B.I.D., but in the year 20 B.I.D. this changed with the new threat of the Aethorid. In 20 B.I.D. the current king, King II, had gotten word that far to the north the Alsian kingdoms were being attacked by a group known as the Aethorid, who had been driven out of their own territory by the Tornalic kingdom on the other side of the continent, and were now forcefully relocating in Alsian territory. King feared that they would go further and start raiding the Jujuk Tubevelk due to its rich cities, so he had forts and cities in the north reinforced and troops sent north to defend the few known mountain passes. But most were stationed near the coast because it was thought that a naval invasion was more likely. All this came to a head in 18 B.I.D. when a large Aethorid force had come through a previously unknown mountain pass and emerged in the Tubevelk without a fight. The first action by this Aethorid army was to attack the nearby city of Gomfaninta. And when they arrived, the defenders first thought the Aethorid force was a friendly army, but when they found out, they frantically prepared for the attack, but it wasn't enough, and after a week, the Aethorid breached the city and sacked it, killing thousands. This was the brutal start of the Jujuk Aethorid Wars. Once word of this reached the larger Tubevelk, everyone was shocked, and an army was sent to Gomfaninta immediately, which arrived by the end of the year. But the Aethorid army was nowhere to be found, and it turns out that this was a short expedition by the Aethorid to see if the Tubevelk was rich as said, and now, since they knew a larger army was heading to the Tubevelk and arrived in 17 B.I.D., which caught the Tubevelk by surprise. But this time, this was a full-scale invasion, which started with the city of Homtamin and grew from there. At this point, the Tubevelk was in full-scale crisis, with thousands of troops moving north to repel the invaders, and after 2 years of fighting, in 15 B.I.D., the Aethorid were pushed back to the mountains, and even though this was a victory for the Tubevelk, it wouldn't be the end of the Aethorid raids. But for now, the Tubevelk began rebuilding the sacked cities, including Homtamin and Gomfaninta. This continued for 5 years until 10 B.I.D., when the second Jujuk Aethorid War began. With the Aethorid still using the unknown mountain pass, they attacked Gomfaninta again, and since the city was still under construction, they didn't stand a chance, and once again the city was sacked, leaving thousands dead. But before the city was sacked, the new governor of the city fled, which resulted in the governor being exiled all the way to Adosia. But back north, things were not going well, since the Tubevelk was still recovering from the last war, so they didn't put up much of a fight, which resulted in the Aethorid reaching the city of Winu in 7 B.I.D., which resulted in a drawn-out siege. This siege lasted until 5 B.I.D., when the siege was finally lifted, and the war finally turned in favor of the Jujuk Tubevelk, since the Aethorid forces were becoming more divided since they were promised riches in the Tubevelk but had hardly received any, causing discontent to rise. Over the next 3 years, the Aethorid would be pushed back to the Shunamic Mountains, and the Tubevelk gained victory again. The Tubevelk enjoyed their victory for the next 2 years, until the year 0, when far to the north beyond the northern coast of the Wekfiran continent, a 1-kilometer asteroid hit the planet and started a long impact winter. This winter devastated the world, including the Jujuk Tubevelk, which experienced famines and a loss of trade due to this event, resulting in wealth loss and the deaths of thousands of people. This winter lasted for years, but during this they had gotten word that the Aethorid had left the Alsian kingdoms, led by someone called Juan, who had promised to take back their homes from the Tornalic people. By 10 A.I.D., the world had started to warm up again, benefited the Tubevelk, but this resulted in a large amount of ice from the Wekfiran mountains to melt, which flooded major rivers like the Benhi and Rakhine rivers, and many cities were flooded because of this. And more people died from drowning, including the king, King II, who died while trying to help his people. But eventually the flooding stopped and everything returned to normal after a while.